Eskom reports progress on 5 gigawatts repowering pipeline as $2.6 billion CIF approval is secured. Eskom has confirmed that it has a 5 gigawatts pipeline of so-called repowering projects at various stages of development on the sites of 6 coal power stations, including Komati, which has already stopped operating and where 122 megawatts of solar PV and 150 megawatts of battery storage is under development. Addressing the most recent Presidential Climate Commission (PCC) meeting, CEO Dan Marokane said that solar PV, wind and battery storage, or BESS, project development work was also underway at Grootvlei, Arnot, Camden and Hendrina, while a gas-to-power project was being assessed at Kriel, alongside PV and BESS. Eskom is targeting commercial operation before 2030 for most of the projects, as it seeks to integrate cleaner generation into its coal-heavy mix and reduce its overall emissions by 40% by the same date. Just energy transition, JET, strategies have been approved for Hendrina, Camden, Grootvlei, and are advanced for Arnot and Kriel, Marokane said, adding that the projects would be pursued in partnership with the private sector. However, he also told the commissioners that the utility was assessing various technologies to help its existing coal stations, which are currently operating under an exemption from the country's minimum emission standards, meet legislated air pollution limits. These included coal co-firing with ammonia, so-called high-efficiency, low-emission solutions and wet and dry flue gas desulfurization. The projects are at various stages of development, and beside the 122 megawatts of solar PV and 150 megawatts of BESS at Komati, include 195 megawatts of solar PV and 150 megawatts of BESS at Grootvlei, 800 megawatts of solar PV, 200 megawatts of BESS and 168 megawatts of wind at Arnot. 680 megawatts of solar PV at Camden, 587 megawatts of solar PV at Hendrina, and 800 megawatts of solar PV, 200 megawatts of BESS and 1,000 megawatts of gas-to-power at Kriel. Having secured regulatory and environmental approvals for the Komati projects, Eskom is aiming to award contracts for a 72 megawatt solar PV project and the 150 megawatts BESS project at Komati during 2025. The Komati projects were receiving priority in light of criticism relating to the fact that the power station was retired before the repowering projects were ready to proceed, a lesson that Marokane said had been transferred to other sites where more upfront preparatory work was being carried out ahead of plant stoppages. A report published this month by the PCC titled Komati's Just Transition, Assessing Progress, Challenges, and Lessons concluded that greater effort should be made to prepare repowering and repurposing projects ahead of decommissioning to improve sequencing, community engagement, and to designate responsibilities. It is clear from talking to stakeholders that implementing a just transition is difficult and time-consuming under the best conditions, but it is even more challenging within the context of high levels of poverty, unemployment, and inequality, the report states, while reaffirming the PCC's commitment to supporting JET initiatives at Komati. Meanwhile, Eskom's confirmation of its repowering project pipeline came days after the June 11 approval of an update to South Africa's Accelerating Coal Transition Investment Plan by the Climate Investment Fund's, CIF's, Clean Technology Fund Trust Fund Committee. CIF funding. In seeking approval from the World Bank-linked fund, Eskom modeled that it could meet its 65 million ton to 72 million ton CO2 equivalent emissions reduction target under a delayed coal decommissioning schedule, which was needed to unlock the CIF funds. This, after Eskom rescheduled decommissioning of the Camden, Grootvlei, and Hendrina power stations from 2027 to 2030. Nevertheless, it was unclear until June 11 whether this would be sufficient to convince the committee, including its U.S. representatives, particularly in light of America's withdrawal, under President Donald Trump, from supporting South Africa's Just Energy Transition Investment Plan, JET-IP. With the approval secured, however, up to $2.6 billion could now be unlocked, including $500 million from the Clean Technology Fund, of which $50 million would be in the form of a grant and $450 million in the form of a highly concessional CIF loan. The balance would be raised from multilateral development banks at concessional rates, $900 million, private investors, $875 million, development finance institution loans, $300 million, and other funders, $30 million. The presidency's Rudy Dix told the PCC that Eskom was to be the recipient of these CIF funds and also confirmed residual international commitments to South Africa's JET-IP of $12.85 billion, following America's withdrawal. Marokane said engagements were underway with various multilateral development banks for front-loading and upfront repowering and repurposing at Camden, Grootvlei, and Hendrina. He also reported progress on various repurposing initiatives, including containerized microgrid assembly, an agrivoltaics project, welder training, and skills development. Various strategy, enterprise development, and community projects were being prioritized under the repurposing banner, including copper recycling, steel component fabrication, a small business accelerator, a call center, and a commercial agriculture project on a 15-hectare site. Repurposing initiatives have been focused to enable economic diversification and job creation in the affected areas, he said.